Absolutely nothing beats windshield time, a road trip, and good conversation in the car. Welcome to another episode of Dan the Road Trip Guy, where we have entertaining conversations about cars and road trips, life lessons, and maybe every now and then a little advice. I'm your host, Dan Neal, road trip extraordinaire, and now buckle up and enjoy the show. My guest today has been kind enough to come on my show each year since its founding in 2022. And I'm really thankful for that. My guest today is Stingray Robb. He's an IndyCar racer. He just finished his second year. I'm excited to have him back for this third drive on Dan the Road Trip Guy. This year, Stingray led the Indianapolis 500 for 23 laps, the third highest of any of the 33 cars. He's also engaged to be married next month, he shared with me. On this episode, we'll talk about his fiancée, leading the 500, finishing a career height at the Bomberito 500. We'll also talk about a race where he had a horrific accident on the last lap in Iowa, and he ended up upside down. We'll talk about those few seconds and what went through his mind. I know you'll enjoy our conversation. Stingray's a fine young man, and I always enjoy talking to him. Welcome to the show, Stingray.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have you back. This is our third little virtual road trip together. Maybe someday we'll ride in the car for real.
That sounds good. Or we'll probably have to take your car. Mine's just a one-seater.
Yeah, that's true. We'll do that. For my listeners who don't know who you are, and I'll point them back to our first ever episode back in 2022, who is Stingray Robb?
Well, that's a great question. I'm figuring that out as I go. The basics of it, I was a kid born and raised into the love of family that loved Corvettes. So racing was in my blood, and therefore they passed their passion on to me through my name. Here I am, 23 years later, an IndyCar driver. I just finished up my sophomore season here. I moved from Idaho to Indianapolis to chase my dreams of being an IndyCar driver back in 2022. And that was when I was in the category right below the IndyCar level. You know, I'm an outdoorsman. I like being from Idaho, being out in the mountains, snow skiing, hiking, fishing, hunting, doing all those things. Road tripping was a big part of my life coming up through the ranks, being on the road a lot, go-karting, and spending 42 weekends a year on the road was fun, but it was tough, and I learned a lot through it. But now I'm an engaged man looking to get married here in November, which is exciting. So I'll be a husband here soon.
Well, congratulations on that. And that was going to be my first question. Before we jump into racing, you had some exciting news this year. You asked a young lady to marry you, and now I know you're getting married in November. Tell me, how'd you all meet?
Well, that's a great question. It's kind of funny. I was creepy neighbor. That's the short side story. But the longer story is that my roommate and I moved from Idaho to Indianapolis in April of 2022. And we didn't have any community here. I mean, we moved here because of racing, and he was going to work at the shop and I was going to the shop to work with the engineers. But outside of that, we didn't have any real close friends or family in the area. So any chance we could, we would meet people. And one day we were walking out of our apartment, and 2 doors down, we saw this group of young girls walk out. It was my now fiancée and her roommates and one of their friends heading away from us, heading to a concert we later found out. But we said, friends, finally, someone our age that we can hang out with. We didn't say hello right away, but, you know, we'd walk past their apartment almost every day, going to the grocery store, going out, hanging out at the park, whatever else. We liked being outside. Naturally, we would observe to see if we could find them at some point. And we noticed walking by their apartment when the blinds are open. It was in the evening. You could see them milling around in there, making dinner, whatever. And then they were closed. The blinds were closed during the day. So we just assumed, okay, they're not home when the blinds are closed, you know?
Right.
And so one day we were heading back from the grocery store and we saw the blinds were open. We're like, you know what? Let's stop and say hello. So we knock on the door. No one answers. We're like, the blinds are open. We know they're home. So we knock louder. And Molly, my fiance, she wasn't my fiance at the time, clearly, but she comes to the door and opens it up. And there's these 2 creepy dudes standing on her front porch. And we introduce ourselves with, you know, a fake name, Stingray, from Idaho. So you have 2 serial murderers standing on your front porch that have made up this story to get into your apartment. Not the first meeting that you would like to have with someone that you want to be your friend. And so we kind of went on our way, whatever. And we actually had a mutual friend that was on the opposite side of our apartment. They kind of reintroduced us. It was a young couple that, you know, we both the groups of us had grown to be friends with. And so they gave us the green flag. And after that, I mean, it was like every night we were making dinner together. And I think the day after we really met for the second time, the better of the two times. We were going to like the Children's Museum here in Indianapolis. We were just doing life together. So we kind of inserted ourselves into her friend group right away. And then, I got to see who she was kind of over time, and that friendship grew. And then pretty soon, 8 months later, I put my head together and went, you know what, this is a pretty nice girl and I like who she is. I know what she's about and I know what she's chasing after. So I'm going to ask her out. And here we are not too long after looking to get married. So pretty cool.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I've been married for 42 years and it's been great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
We grew up 4 miles apart. So
wow. That's awesome. I think that's good to be friends. It's a great way to start a relationship, is to understand who they are without that infatuation period of dating and the mess of all that. So
for sure.
It's a good way to be.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump to some racing, because you are a race car driver, and that's what we're going to talk about.
I like it.
But you said this is your sophomore season. Last year you raced with a veteran race team in Del Coin. This year you moved to the iconic AJ Foyt racing team. Tell me about that experience. What was that like?
Man, it was great. There was a lot to learn this year. I kind of describe it to many people as my second rookie season, just because IndyCar is tough these days. It's very competitive. And I'm racing against guys that have been winning races since I was born. So
absolutely,
there's a huge learning curve there. But stepping into AJ Foyt Racing, there was a lot of new guys on the team. So we still had the iconic name to kind of lean on, but there's a lot of experience that walked in the door during the off season that they didn't have in previous years, which made it kind of a transitional year, I guess you would call it, because a lot of engineers that left and then came in, and so we were kind of learning how to communicate, how to build the systems, who do we need to lean on through the first part of the season. Then we kind of hit our stride during the month of May. And obviously that's a good time to do it. Going into the Indy 500, and, we led 23 laps there. It was the third most of anyone on the day. And, I think that at some point AJ leaned over on the radio and said, this kid might win it. That was a pretty cool compliment to hear from the legend himself. But yeah, definitely a really cool thing to be in a Chevy car with AJ Foyt Racing. It was kind of a match made in heaven a little bit as far as the branding side goes. There's a lot of good stories to tell there.
Yeah, we were setting up in turn 2, and all of a sudden you're leading the race, and my wife and I were looking at each other going, could this maybe?
We were all thinking it.
And then we're thinking, now he's on some weird pit stop strategy, so maybe this is all going to work out.
Yeah, if we put in one lap earlier before that last yellow flag that came out, we would have been running top 5 pretty easily, I think. Just frustrating, but that's the way Indy 500 goes. I mean, it's picks the winner. It really does pick the winner. It was one of those days where what if sounded like a funny thing to hear from a 16th place finisher, but it really felt like, man, what if?
Well, you finished 16th, but I looked back at the timing charts and it was 8.5 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, you commented on the competitive nature out there. I mean, I think that just speaks to it. Qualifying separated by tenths, hundredths of seconds.
Yeah, it's so tight. And, qualifying this year I felt like was even tighter than normal. I don't know if it's because in a small industry like IndyCar Racing, guys move from team to team, but it seemed like everyone was on top of their game and very competitive this year.
Qualifying was a little less stressful this year than last year, I guess.
That's correct, yeah. I think qualifying 24th was, not too exciting, but at the same time, I was like, okay, I'm going to go take a nap now. I don't have to worry about being in the last row party.
Yeah.
Much more comfortable, but still wanted more. I think that we found a couple mistakes that were made going into qualifying, but got us sorted for the race. I mean, our race car was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So being able to run at the front was awesome. Making moves with the leaders was so much fun. So I don't know if I would have changed anything other than that last pit stop. During the whole month, it was a cool experience.
That's great. Bringing the field back to green, I mean, that had to be this moment. I don't know what it requires, but you come around that fourth turn and the green flag comes out and you got 30 guys behind you that want to go just as fast and get around you. What was that feeling like?
It was intense. I was a little nervous because there's 32 other cars behind you that want to kill you, it seems like. So
yeah,
I was chomping on the bit to jump on the throttle and get out of the way. So yeah, but it was fun. It's kind of funny. People ask like, how nervous were you? And I tell them like, I think I was more nervous starting in the mid pack than I was out front.
Sure.
Because it just felt so much more natural and felt like the right thing out front. I mean, I told people this after the race. I was like, now I understand why they do it so much. It's way easier out front than it is in the mid pack. People are angry and feisty in the mid pack.
Yeah, they want to get around people. And when you're up there in the front, you just got to press that right foot down, right?
Exactly.
Well, that was great, and that was just so much fun. And a lot of my friends know that I know you, and they'll be like, "Wow, I saw Stingray leading the race, the Indy 500." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's right."
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, you had a career high finish at the Bomberito 500, finished ninth.
That's right.
And that was a great
That's right.
race.
That was really cool. I knew that we had a better car than where we qualified. I don't know what qualifying curse that we got this year, but we were just so frustrated. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, if we qualified inside the top 15, we'll race forward still. We have a good enough car. We were quick enough at different times, but that race at Gateway was really fun. I remember from the night practice, I was passing anyone that I could. I mean, we would see someone, chase them down, pass them. See someone, chase them down, pass them. We were pretty hooked up, and the longer the race went on, the better we were. That last restart, we had a little bit of a hard time getting the tires warmed back up, but finishing in the top 10 was really cool.
Great race. Not to bring up Iowa, but I did want to ask you about Iowa. First race, of course, but then the second race, crazy last lap. Another car slowed on you. You tumbled over and over a few times and landed upside down. I have to ask you what, and I know it went by in a blink, so you're not like thinking, okay, what's going to happen here? But I know you're also a believer, so I was like, oh, maybe he was having a little conversation there.
Oh, yeah. I had plenty of conversations during my time being airborne there. It's so annoying. You know, people are like, well, did you black out? Did you remember any of it? I'm like, I remembered all of it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remembered hitting the back of Rossi's car and then going airborne and then seeing the top of the catch fence out of the aero screen. And it was like someone hit the pause button. I was like, oh, no. I'm in the air. This is not good. And I let go of the steering wheel and kind of like grabbed on the seatbelts on my chest. And then I had enough time before I hit the ground to think about guys like Dixon when he went through the air, Hinchcliffe when he went through the air recently at the 500 during the month of May there, and getting, kebabbed by suspension bits and everything else. And I'm like waiting for that to happen. But kind of crazy. I had the big impact in the ground and like was totally fine. And I even had the wherewithal to reach up and close my visor because it got knocked open on the, upside down landing there. I had an insane amount of peace through all of that.
Sure.
I don't exactly know why that is, but the best answer I can give, it was God, kind of being with me in that moment, showing me his glory in the highs and lows of racing. Because that's been my prayer all year. It's God, give me eyes to see your glory in every bit of it. I want to be able to have joy in the gap of where I'm not good enough, but where you are. I don't want to set my identity in the results. I don't want to set my purpose necessarily in the results. I don't want to find my value in the result, but I want to be able to lean on you when I'm seeking those results. Having a big crash like that, it was probably like one of the worst days to have, but the way that I felt, I don't know how to describe it or why it was the way it was, but I was very grateful to be okay after that accident. And, I did pass out once they got me righted up and sat up in the car, but as soon as I got laid parallel back to the ground, I came to and told them, I'm not doing well. They said, yeah, we know.
We can see that.
Yeah, they life flighted me out of there, and I was totally fine. I was with it 100%, but they just wanted to get a CT scan to make sure I didn't have any brain bleeds or anything like that. And I was totally fine. So Walked out of the hospital a few hours later, got some dinner and drove home. It's one of those things where an impact of 109 G's is not something that people walk away from too often. I felt my share of God's glory in that moment of just his protection.
Thanks for sharing that. And, I think back, I'm obviously older than you, and I remember races from back in the 70s, and cars just going into pieces and pieces of the car sitting there. And, I look at these cars after that happened to you, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the car is intact. And of course, the aero screen protected you. Just the safety of these cars today is amazing.
No, it is. I mean, I feel much better climbing into that car now after the crash, which is kind of funny to say, but it's because I put it to the test. I know what they're capable of now. I don't want to try that ever again, but I do have some peace in getting in.
Yeah, I don't like to see crashes. I'm not one of those spectators that goes, oh, waiting on the big one. It's like, no, I'm not waiting on it. And the other thing is that safety team and watching them. I went back and watched it, watching them roll the car over with you in it and taking so much care to make sure they don't hurt you in rolling that car over.
No, it was kind of funny, actually. I shouldn't say funny. It was ironic, but my spotter, he can see everything that's going on. And when I was skidding on my head, he was telling me on the radio, okay, you're almost stopped. You're almost stopped. Okay, you're stopped. Don't get out of the car. They're coming to you. all right, the safety crew's there. And so he was updating me the whole time. And when I looked up, or looked down rather, probably, I got to see the feet of the safety crew running towards me, and they drop their head down to where I'm at. And they say, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not okay. Did you see what I just did?" So I'm sure they kind of got the worst version of me for a couple of seconds and took care of me nonetheless. But, I think that, in those moments, it's kind of like, wow, okay. Yeah, you're probably not okay, but you're talking to me, so you're mostly okay. It seems like you're fine. It's pretty crazy.
While I was watching it, Kirkwood had Carpenter on top of him. He's trying to get out and doesn't realize there's a tire sitting on top of his head.
Scary stuff. We try not to put cars airborne too often, just for that reason.
Yeah, we prefer you not. I'm sure most of my listeners, Stingray, are not race fans. I don't believe. I have a few, but so you finish the season. And most people might think, oh, he's done. What happens in the off season?
Well, I can tell you that the few hours after the Nashville race, which was our finale, we were driving home for a meeting the next morning, some different teams for next year. Since the end of the season, I've had more meetings and phone calls and appearances than I've known what to do with, but that's the best time to get it done. So, I'm visiting high schools, talking to kids about making choices that are important to stay safe on the roads. I'm working with a group right now called Choices Matter, and it's a campaign to make kids or inspire kids to make the right choices. Don't drink and drive, don't do drugs, don't be distracted, put the phone down, wear your seatbelt. Those are all key things for success on the racetrack. And it means even more when you're on the road with so many other people that are distracted. You got to be the ones paying attention and safe. So working with campaigns like that has been fun, and it's been keeping me busy. And then in the meantime, I've been doing a little wedding planning. My job, the further I get along in my career, the less driving I do and the more speaking engagements I'll do.
Sure.
The more off-track activities I'm involved with. But that's kind of the fun bit, is that we get to be versatile as far as athletes go and not just turn a wheel and hit the gas pedal.
Are you getting married in Indy or Idaho?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Both.
That's good.
The main wedding is going to be just south of Indianapolis. Okay. And then we're going to do a reception with my side of the family out in Idaho. I had to, with a big family like what I got, it makes it kind of hard to have everyone fly out. So we're going to go to them.
Was she a race fan, or is she now a race fan?
She's definitely more of a race fan now, but she actually was a little bit before. Her family actually knew Brian Clausen before he passed.
Okay.
And they were big USAC dirt track fans. They've taken me to a few of those races and kind of won me over to the dark side there. But they've been in Indianapolis area for a long time and have followed Indy 500 for a long time. So when I came about, they were not unfamiliar to the sport and definitely were excited to have someone to cheer for.
That's nice. I don't know if you can share. We're hoping to see you back again next year. Is there anything you can share about your plans?
Well, as of now, we're still working on it. We have a couple options available to us.
Okay.
They're both decent options. It's just a matter of putting the deals together. So I'm always the one that feels like it's pushing things forward as soon as possible. It's one of those things where it's like it's in God's timing, it seems like, and I always want it done sooner than when He's ready to have it be done. I'm sitting here waiting just as much as you guys are to sign a contract and be good to go. But good. We are expecting to be on the grid next year with a pretty good seat.
That is great news. Well, Stingray, that's about it for our little road trip here, but do leave my listeners with how to follow you, how to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and any charity that you want to mention.
Oh, man. Okay, here we go. Well, this is going to be a long end
long
of
list, right?
I like it.
Yeah, I watch you on Instagram, and he's like, okay, today. And I'm like...
Okay, well, you can follow me on any of the social medias at Stingray Robb, ROBB. That's 2 B's in Robb. I think my Twitter's a little bit different, or X, whatever it's called now. It's Sting_Ray_Robb. This off season, I'm going to be doing a lot of different activities outside of racing. If you are a race fan, please follow along. But if not, feel free to follow along because there's going to be some fun stuff going on as well. I'm also going to be racing next year in the NTT IndyCar Series, which is broadcast by Fox Sports. It's a new product that they're coming out with next year, which is very exciting. So follow the races there. You can go to IndyCar.com to check our schedule out, and go to my website, StingrayRobb.com. I'm selling some merch on there. Or if you just want to follow along on the journey, please feel free to visit that.
Well, thank you, Stingray. And yeah, we're delighted to see Fox because it's like, okay, where is this race being broadcast today in the past years?
Yes. Yeah. So it's all on Fox now. and it sounds like it's going to be a good thing for the sport. I'm excited. I think that everyone else is as well.
Thank you again, Stingray, for coming on another ride with Dan the Road Trip Guy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Until we meet up again, you can find me on the internet at dantheroadtripguy.com. I hope you will follow this podcast so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes, and share it with your family and friends so that they can enjoy the stories of my guests also. Until we meet again on a future episode, keep having conversations with each other and keep driving.